for the last 10 years, the ultimate symbol of luxury was an empty white room.
Yeah, literally just white walls and empty space.
Right. Think back to almost any upscale event or reception you attended, or, even just saw photos of over the last decade. You know the exact look I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
It was those crisp white linens, completely clear acrylic ghost chairs.
The ones that practically disappeared into the background.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And maybe like a very sparse geometric copper arch, or just a solitary delicate sprig of eucalyptus sitting on a perfectly blank plate.
It was beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, it was undeniably clean.
It was. And it was absolutely everywhere. But, well, according to the data we are looking at today, elegance as we know it is dead. Welcome to the era of controlled chaos.
It really is a fascinating paradigm shift. We spent the 2010s and the early 2020s obsessed with this stark, almost clinical restraint. Minimalism felt safe. It felt curated. But the cultural pendulum never just stops in the middle. It swings all the way back. And we are currently accelerating rapidly in the exact opposite direction.
We really are. So today we are diving into a massive stack of fresh 2026 trend reports that all point to the exact same undeniable conclusion.
And it's a loud conclusion.
Very loud. The absolute domination of maximalist pattern play and oversized bows in celebration and reception decor. The goal of this deep dive is to explore exactly what this vibrant aesthetic entails, why it is taking over the industry, and honestly, how people are actually pulling it off without it looking like a total mess.
Which is the big question, right?
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at these 2026 design boards, the shift from those all-white minimalist rooms to this new trend...
It's pretty jarring at first glance.
It is. It's exactly like walking out of an empty, sterile modern art gallery and stepping directly into a vibrant, bustling, incredibly detailed Renaissance painting. It is just joyful abundance everywhere you look.
And it is crucial to understand the psychology driving that abundance.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, this shift isn't just a random assortment of people deciding to throw a bunch of clashing items together in a room. It is a highly deliberate celebration of romance and creativity.
So it's very intentional.
Highly intentional.
Yeah.
What the data shows is a movement to turn event spaces into fully immersive, deeply personalized experiences. It's really a rebellion against that tired idea that true elegance requires holding back.
Right. For a decade, the unspoken rule was less is more. And now the rule is very firm.
Yeah, is more.
Exactly. More is definitely more. But to really grasp how this works, we need to understand the overarching philosophy driving this aesthetic. The reports refer to it as maximalist pattern play.
Yeah, so the core of maximalist pattern play relies on the deliberate collision of prints, textures, and colors. And that's to create intense visual interest. We're talking about completely abandoning the solid, neutral blocks of color we are so used to seeing.
The sources outline what this actually looks like in practice, and it is intense. This philosophy embraces heavy, sprawling floral patterns layered directly next to sharp, rigid stripes.
And classic vintage checks.
Yes, and highly ornate motifs. The focus is on heavily layered table linens, intensely colorful glassware, decorative ribbons literally everywhere, and massive statement centerpieces. But I have to push back here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I know what you listening right now might be thinking. If we are mixing heavy floral prints, bold stripes, and vintage checks all in the exact same room...
That sounds like a lot.
It sounds like an explosion in a fabric store. Visually, how is that not completely overwhelming?
That reaction is entirely natural, especially when we have spent a decade being trained to fear clutter.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the underlying logic of this design. Designers call it artistic harmony.
Artistic harmony.
Right. It's not about throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Think about it like cooking a highly complex curry.
Okay.
If you just dump 20 raw spices into a pot, it's inedible. It's a total mess. But if you use a specific mechanism like blooming those spices in a rich fat grants, it binds the intense competing flavors together into a unified, luxurious sauce.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
In interior and event design, color theory and scale act as that binding agent.
So it is about the mechanics of how the patterns interact, not just the patterns themselves.
Precisely. Like a massive, oversized floral print has a completely different visual weight than a tiny, tightly woven vintage check.
Right. They take up different amounts of mental space.
Exactly. When a designer places a large-scale organic pattern next to a small-scale geometric one, the brain doesn't perceive them as fighting for the same attention.
Oh, I see.
One becomes the dominant node, and the other becomes the texture behind it. They are meticulously curating these clashes so they complement rather than compete.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. If you just have a room full of competing loud noises, you need a way to filter them.
Hmm.
And to achieve that artistic harmony amidst all these wild competing patterns, designers clearly need something to ground the eye, something to act as that binding agent you mentioned. According to the 2026 reports, they are anchoring this entire maximalist aesthetic with a specific, surprisingly classic focal point that has been completely supersized. We are talking about the bow.
The bow. It really has evolved from a simple, sweet decorative accent into a major architectural design statement.
It's
You're
wild.
seeing a masterclass in scale here.
They really are everywhere in these reports. They detail these massive, sweeping satin bows tied to the backs of reception chairs.
Mhm.
They're acting as both an elegant touch and this giant, whimsical statement piece. They are on the tables with intricate ribbon details woven directly into the napkins and the menus.
And the floristry, too.
Yes, florists are building thick velvet and raw silk bows directly into bouquets and centerpieces and the cakes.
Oh, the cakes are
The
incredible.
decorators are utilizing giant fondant bows and cascading ribbons to create incredibly dramatic, editorial-inspired structures.
Taking an item historically associated with delicate, subtle femininity and blowing it up to the size of a piece of furniture, it completely changes its impact in a room.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It is not just the massive size, right? It is the brilliant manipulation of contrasting textures.
How do you mean?
Think about how a heavy velvet or a raw silk bow actually feels when it is tucked into a fresh, delicate floral arrangement. The flowers are fragile and temporary, but the velvet looks lush, heavy, and permanent.
Yeah, that contrast is striking.
It physically grounds the eye. And then on the cake side of things, using fondant, which is essentially a highly pliable, dense sugar paste to create a massive flowing bow.
That is not easy to do.
No, that requires incredible culinary architecture.
Yeah.
They are taking a heavy, solid block of sugar and engineering it to look completely weightless, like fabric caught in the wind.
That tension between materials with what elevates the design. And beyond the physical engineering, there is a profound psychological mechanism at work with these oversized bows.
Really? Like what?
They provide a necessary softness. When you walk into a room and you have jagged chevron stripes or intense, heavily saturated vintage motifs fighting for your attention, the sweeping curved lines of a massive satin bow act as a visual deep breath.
Oh, I love that. Like a structural palette cleanser.
Exactly. The human brain naturally associates sharp angles and clashing patterns with high energy, sometimes even stress.
Here.
The smooth, continuous loop of a bow tells the brain to relax. It signals romance. It reminds the guest that despite the aggressive, high-fashion styling of the room, they are still at a celebration of love.
That makes total sense. If the bow is the visual deep breath that calms the chaos, that psychological trick is put to the ultimate test in the one place where guests are physically anchored for hours, the dinner table.
Yes.
Which brings us to the masterpiece tablescapes and the color palettes.
The tablescape is the crucible of the maximalist trend. This is where your guests sit down, stop moving, and absorb every single detail right in front of them.
You're stuck staring at it.
Right. You cannot hide sloppy design on a dinner table.
And the sources show that designers are treating these tables like canvases.
Okay.
They are heavily utilizing those pattern tablecloths we talked about, layering the florals and stripes, but they are building upward.
Verticality is huge.
They are using highly textured charger plates, which, if you aren't familiar, are those large decorative base plates that sit under the actual dinner plate and just serve to frame the food.
Yeah.
They are tying menus with ribbons, but the real shift is in the glassware and the lighting. We are seeing a massive surge in colored glassware, specifically amber, pink, and emerald glasses.
Gorgeous colors.
And they are illuminating everything with mixed-height decorative candlesticks. It is like building a theatrical set layer by layer.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, consider the mechanism of how light interacts with those specific elements. The mixed-height candles aren't just there so people can see their food.
Right.
By staggering the heights of the flames, you create vertical architecture.
Yeah.
You break up the flat, horizontal plane of the table.
Oh, that's really smart.
And when you place colored glass, like a deep emerald or a warm amber, near those varying light sources, the glass acts as a filter. It casts colored shadows across the patterned linens.
Wow.
It transforms the table from a functional place to eat a meal into a deeply immersive, tactile environment.
The colors they are choosing to filter that light are stunning. The reports highlight 4 dominant palettes for 2026 that bring this maximalist vision to life, and the rationale behind each one is fascinating.
Let's hear them.
First, there is the pink and green garden palette. This relies heavily on botanical prints and those giant satin bows.
The drive behind pink and green is all about invoking organic energy. For years, white and gold dominated because it felt statuesque and, permanent.
Like a museum.
Exactly. Pink and green, by contrast, feels like a living, breathing garden. It mimics the natural world, bringing an inherent vitality into a closed reception space.
It feels alive. Then we have blue and white vintage elegance. The sources note this takes its inspiration directly from classic porcelain patterns and old European aesthetics.
Which is a brilliant subversion of expectations.
How so?
Well, blue and white is historically the most conservative traditional pairing you can find. Think of your grandmother's fine china.
Right. Very proper.
But by applying the maximalist philosophy to it, by taking that conservative blue and white floral, blowing the scale up by 500%, and throwing a massive pooling velvet bow across it, designers are weaponizing nostalgia.
Weaponizing nostalgia.
Yeah, they are taking a strict tradition and making it feel highly rebellious.
Oh, I love that concept. Taking the traditional and turning the volume all the way up. The third palette is peach, coral, and gold. The reports describe this as warm and luxurious.
That palette is highly manipulative in the best way possible.
Manipulative.
Warm tones like peach and gold directly impact how we perceive the temperature and mood of a room. It simulates the psychological response we have to golden hour right before sunset.
Oh, wow.
By bathing a room in amber glass and coral hues, designers are essentially trying to freeze time. They're making the guests feel permanently wrapped in that warm twilight glow.
That is so clever. And finally, the fourth major palette is lavender and sage. The sources point out that this is focused on softer colors, but deeply layered textures to bring out a sense of sophistication.
Because the colors themselves are muted, the design has to rely entirely on tactile depth.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
If you just use flat cotton in lavender and sage, it looks washed out. It's boring. But if you use a sage velvet tablecloth under a lavender ribbed glass charger,
Oh, I see.
the shadows caught in the texture do the heavy lifting. It proves that maximalism doesn't always require blindingly bright colors. It just requires a total commitment to sensory depth.
Which perfectly transitions us to the logistical reality of this trend, escaping the dinner table and climbing the walls. Because in a true maximalist design, the aesthetic absolutely refuses to stop at eye level.
Right. The concept of immersive styling means the design must conquer the entire physical environment, floor to ceiling.
And that starts with the florals. The trend reports emphasize that lush, overwhelming floral installations are mandatory. We aren't talking about a few nice vases here.
Not at all.
Planners are utilizing garden roses, peonies, hydrangeas, and massive quantities of ranunculus, which are those incredibly dense, ruffled flowers that look almost like origami.
Oh, beautiful.
They are. Along with towering stalks of delphiniums to add architectural height, they are mixing these with yards of silk ribbons. But it goes way beyond the table. Luxury planners are creating entirely patterned lounge areas with bold sofas and heavy cushions. They are building massive ribbon backdrops purely for photo moments. And the craziest part to me, suspended floral ceiling installations. The blooms are physically hanging upside down over the guests' heads.
The logistics behind a suspended floral ceiling are staggering.
I can't even imagine.
You are talking about hundreds of pounds of organic material, water tubes to keep them fresh, and structural rigging that has to be safely secured to the venue's architecture. It is a massive engineering feat disguised as delicate romance.
But I really have to ask you, with suspended floral ceilings requiring structural rigging, huge patterned lounge sofas, and massive ribbon walls, is this trend really about a couple celebrating their romance? Or is it just about creating a viral, Instagram-worthy photo trap? I mean, are we just designing a highly elaborate movie set so people can post about it?
This raises an important question.
Yeah.
And it is a completely valid critique. When you look at the sheer scale and expense of these productions, it is easy to assume it is purely performative.
Right.
But if you look at the cultural shift driving it, it is ultimately about storytelling and rejecting anonymity.
How so? Rejecting anonymity.
Think back to the minimalist era we started this conversation with. A stark, white room with clear acrylic chairs is undeniably beautiful, but it is entirely anonymous.
That's true.
That room looks the exact same, whether the couple hosting the event is from New York